Millionaire CEO fakes coma, overhears nurses revealing secret phone call, and something surprising happens right after. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Chloe Bennett pressed the back of her hand to her brow as she stepped out of room 402, where an elderly patient had needed extra reassurance before bedtime. The bustle of the Presbyterian Hospital's corridor in Manhattan buzzed all around her, beeping machines, the soft hum of fluorescent lights, and hushed conversations among staff. At 38, Chloe was a seasoned nurse whose compassion and efficiency were well known on this floor. Her colleagues would often remark that she seemed able to console even the most anxious patient with just a few kind words. Yet, behind her composed exterior, Chloe felt an unyielding tension pulsing through her. She thought about the Bloom Project, the community garden in Queens that she had founded a few years ago. The project was meant to be a safe and nurturing environment for at-risk youth to learn about responsibility, collaboration, and nature's quiet healing. Now the landowner, Mr. Henderson, was threatening to sell that property to real estate developers. With every day that passed, the situation inched closer to a point of no return. Her phone buzzed just as she reached the nurse's break room. Chloe glanced around before answering, ensuring no one urgently needed her. "Yes, Mr. Henderson, I understand," she said in a low voice. "I'm trying my best to find a solution. Please just give me a bit more time." She hung up, feeling the sharp sting of mounting pressure. It was the third call from him this week, and each conversation left her more uneasy. Inside the break room, Dr. Ramirez, a tall man with salt and pepper hair, was sipping coffee. He greeted Chloe with a warm nod. "You look exhausted," he observed gently. "Pulling extra shifts again?" Chloe forced a small laugh. "Isn't that part of the job description?" She slumped into a plastic chair, allowing the briefest moment of vulnerability to cross her features. Dr. Ramirez was the only one at the hospital who knew the extent of her worries, both professional and personal. His concern was evident in the way he set down his mug and leaned forward. "You can't keep burning the candle at both ends," he said, voice low. "I know how much the Bloom Project means to you. If the landowner is giving you grief, maybe there's another route, more sponsors, or a conversation with City Council." Chloe closed her eyes for a moment. "I've tried, but sponsors want quick returns or brand visibility. We're just a local project with a shoestring budget. And City Council, they have bigger priorities. It's always the same story. Either I find a major donor or Henderson sells to the highest bidder." "Doctor." Ramirez tapped his fingers against the table in an uneven rhythm. "If there's one thing I've learned after decades in medicine," he said, "it's that nothing is ever as impossible as it seems." Then he glanced at the clock. "Well, time for me to check on a patient. Hang in there, Chloe." With a compassionate pat on her shoulder, he left. Chloe allowed herself another moment of quiet, letting the constant whir of the hospital fade to background noise. Her mind drifted to the garden's last workshop, recalling the bright faces of teenagers planting herbs and sketching murals. Those were the moments that renewed her spirit, reminding her why she kept pushing forward. She couldn't let that space vanish. Not when it was doing so much good for kids who needed a safe place to grow, literally and figuratively. A quick knock on the door pulled her from her reverie. It was Sarah Chen, a fellow nurse and her closest friend. "They need you in room 407, Sarah said gently, then lowered her voice. "Everything okay?" Chloe exhaled. "Just Mr. Henderson again. I can't lose that garden, Sarah." "Don't give up," Sarah encouraged, her eyes brimming with empathy. "We'll figure something out." Chloe smiled gratefully and stood, her posture shifting back into its disciplined, professional alignment. As she strode toward room 407, The swirl of hospital life enveloped her once more. Yet beneath her brisk steps and calm demeanor, her heart pounded with worry about the looming deadline for the Bloom Project and the creeping sense that this time her usual resilience might not be enough. Still, she reminded herself that every day brought a chance, however small, to turn things around. And so, despite the weariness lining her eyes, Chloe vowed to keep pushing. For now, the hum of monitors and the steady beep of IV pumps were her reality, a place where she could at least offer solace and compassion. Tomorrow, she would look for new ways to save the garden, no matter how steep the odds. By mid-morning the next day, the hospital halls hummed with an undercurrent of suspense. Sarah Chen sidled up to Chloe while she was restocking supplies. "Have you heard the rumor?" she whispered. "Some big-shot CEO is coming in. Car accident victim." Chloe paused, half a dozen gauze pads in her hand. "CEO? Which one?" Sarah shrugged. "Don't know. They're keeping it quiet, but it's all over the staff chat. The official line is he's stable, but the injuries might require observation. Rumor is he requested a private floor if available." A flicker of annoyance crossed Chloe's mind. VIP patients often meant extra protocols, tight-lipped staff, and a swirl of hospital politics. She quickly sealed a box of medical supplies and sighed. "Well, guess we'll see soon enough. Let's just hope it doesn't turn into some media circus." She carried the box to the next room, her shoes squeaking slightly on the polished floor. The morning flew by as Chloe tended to her usual roster: post-operative patients, a child recovering from pneumonia, and an elderly woman with a persistent heart condition. Yet the buzz about the incoming VIP patient grew louder with each passing hour. Dr. Ramirez eventually confirmed that the new admission was a man named Vincent Moore, a well-known figure in the corporate world. Chloe recognized the name, though faintly. Moore Industries dealt with real estate ventures, technology, and various other big-ticket fields. She'd heard a snippet about them on the news once, mostly about how powerful and wealthy their CEO was. During her lunch break in the hospital cafeteria, Chloe found a corner table with Sarah. She nibbled on a small salad, her thoughts still spinning with the tension of the Bloom Project. Mr. Henderson had texted her right before lunchtime, reminding her the clock was ticking. She wanted to confide in Sarah, but the cafeteria was crowded and prying ears were everywhere. Sarah caught her anxious expression. "Let me guess. Henderson again?" Chloe just nodded, a tight line forming on her lips. She managed a wry laugh. "I can practically see him drooling over that developer's money. Meanwhile, I'm here patching up patients and hoping for a miracle. If I don't lock down a funder soon," Sarah squeezed her friend's hand, "we'll figure something out. Maybe the hospital can host a small charity event. Or Dr. Ramirez might have connections." "Maybe?" Chloe's tone was uncertain. She knew these ideas had merit, but time was so short. Her mind flicked to the thought of a big sponsor. Ironically, maybe someone like the elusive CEO who was about to be admitted here. But she dismissed the notion as soon as it arose. Her past experience with generous benefactors made her wary. They either wanted a marketing angle or ended up betraying her trust. She wouldn't go down that road again. As the afternoon wore on, the hospital's energy shifted. Nurses and orderlies hustled to prepare a private suite on one of the top floors. Chloe glimpsed the swirl of activity from a distance, hearing snatches of conversation. Car accident but minimal injuries. Wealthy industrialist. Must sign strict confidentiality forms. The more she overheard, the less she wanted to be involved. She already had enough stress. That resolve, however, did not stop her from feeling a peculiar chill that ran down her spine. Something about this situation felt like a brewing storm. She couldn't put her finger on it. Maybe it was just her own anxieties merging with the hospital's tension. but an odd sensation told her that this patient's arrival might pull her life in a new direction, whether she liked it or not. Late in the day, Dr. Ramirez stepped into the hallway and motioned Chloe over. "Chloe," he began in a measured tone, "I need you on the team for our new VIP patient, Vincent Moore. He'll be here within the hour." Her stomach twisted slightly. She forced a polite nod. Of course, whatever the hospital needs. Inside, her mind reeled. Another high-profile patient, more demands. And in the midst of all this, Henderson's texts loomed like storm clouds on the horizon. As she followed Dr. Ramirez to review charts, Chloe braced herself. A tempest was coming. She only hoped her resolve was strong enough to weather it. Chloe's shift stretched late into the evening by the time Vincent Moore was finally settled into his private room. The nurses who had initially received him whispered among themselves about how the CEO had been found unconscious at the scene of a minor car accident. However, initial scans showed no major trauma beyond cuts and bruises. Suspicion floated in the air. Why would a man with so little visible harm remain unresponsive? Stepping into the corridor outside his suite, Chloe found Dr. Ramirez updating a digital chart. "How is he?" she asked, forcing a calm she didn't entirely feel. Dr. Ramirez exhaled. "Stable. Vitals normal. Neurological responses are puzzling, though. He's not reacting, yet there's no clear damage on the scans. We'll keep observing." Chloe nodded, scanning the nearby monitors with mild apprehension. VVIP patients often came with hidden complexities: personal guards, corporate legal teams, relatives with high expectations. She'd learned from experience that the simplest-looking case could become complicated overnight if a news outlet or a suspicious investor found something to latch onto. Returning to her small desk station, Chloe tried to push aside the swirl of her internal worries, the looming threat to the Bloom project and her unease at dealing with another high-status patient. She had no evidence that Moore was anything but an unfortunate accident victim, yet a sliver of doubt nagged at her. Part of it was her past experience with wealthy donors who often turned manipulative. Part of it was the odd way he'd shown up unresponsive without any clear medical explanation. Her phone buzzed just then. She glanced down and saw Mr. Henderson's name lighting up the screen. Another text demanding an update. She resisted the urge to throw the device against the wall. Instead, she typed back a quick, polite reassurance that she was working on funds and ended with a plea for more time. Sarah Chen approached with a gentle hand on Chloe's shoulder. "Everything okay?" Chloe managed a weary smile. "Henderson again. I swear, if I didn't know better, I think he enjoys watching me scramble." Sarah shook her head sympathetically. "And how about Mr. Moore? You going to be assigned as his primary nurse?" "I hope not. But Dr. Ramirez might decide otherwise." Chloe closed her eyes for a moment, recalling a painful memory. The ex-partner who'd promised to invest in her garden, only to vanish with some of the funds. That betrayal had hardened her stance against letting wealthy individuals get too close. Now here was another powerful man, lying in a hospital bed under mysterious circumstances. Could she keep her professional composure and not let past wounds bleed into this situation? They parted ways when an urgent page called Sarah upstairs. Chloe lingered at her desk, skimming through patient updates. She saw the name Vincent Moore in the digital roster. With a sigh, she clicked to review his file. He was 47, CEO of a global corporation known for real estate expansions. She unconsciously bit her lip. Real estate expansions, the very force threatening her precious garden in Queens. Irony, or a cosmic prank? After finishing her final tasks, Chloe decided to slip into Moore's room for a quick check. Entering quietly, she found the room dimly lit, the city lights twinkling through the large windows. Vincent lay motionless, connected to monitors that showed normal, steady patterns. She observed his face in the faint glow. He was older than she'd expected, silver strands at his temples, with strong features that seemed oddly peaceful in rest. For a moment, she studied him, trying to piece together the puzzle of how a minor accident left him in such a state. She stepped closer, adjusting the IV drip. "You're a puzzling one," she murmured softly, not truly expecting any response. "Please don't complicate my life more than it already is." Her words lingered in the still air. No reply, of course. She hesitated, feeling a rush of guilt. It wasn't his fault her world teetered on the brink, and yet something about the entire situation unsettled her. Finally, she left the room, quietly pulling the door shut. If Vincent Moore was just another patient, she'd handle it. But a strange dread told her that nothing about this man or her future would be simple. Chloe moved briskly through the hospital corridors the following morning, determined to focus on her duties and not let her private worries overshadow her care for patients. Yet every time she glimpsed the sign pointing toward the VIP suite, a nagging tension flared in her chest. She tried to dismiss it as leftover anxiety from last night, telling herself that, accident or not, Mr. Moore was simply another patient in need of observation. But as she approached the nursing station, she found Sarah engaged in a hushed conversation with Dr. Ramirez. Their expressions told Chloe something was amiss. Sarah spotted her and beckoned her closer. "There's a visitor here for Mr. Moore, Alex Sterling, the Vice President of Moore Industries." Dr. Ramirez frowned. "He arrived this morning, claimed urgent business with Mr. Moore. We allowed him access, but it's tense in there." I stepped in briefly. Sterling was pacing around the bed, talking under his breath. Hard to say if it's genuine concern or something else. Chloe exhaled. "Well, that's not unusual for high-profile individuals. They have corporate affairs to juggle." "True," Dr. Ramirez conceded. "Just keep an eye on the situation. If anything unsettles you, let me know." Moments later, Chloe was beeped to room 510, where a middle-aged patient needed a pain medication adjustment. She focused on the immediate task, verifying dosages, checking vitals, offering a reassuring word. Yet, all the while, she remained aware of the tension swirling one floor up in the corridor outside Vincent Moore's suite. By lunchtime, she felt the day's stress bearing down like a weight on her shoulders. Her stomach growled, reminding her she'd skipped breakfast. Making her way to the hospital cafeteria, she planned to regroup and maybe text Henderson, anything to buy a bit more time for the Bloom project. She grabbed a quick sandwich and a coffee, then found a free table. Just as she took her first sip, her phone buzzed. Another message from Mr. Henderson. "You're running out of time, Chloe. Don't think I won't sell." The bluntness struck her like a punch. Her mind raced. Fundraisers and rummage sales wouldn't raise the tens of thousands required, and no philanthropic group she'd contacted had shown interest for such a small-scale local project, at least not quickly. She clenched her jaw, feeling a fresh wave of panic. Finishing her coffee in one gulp, she left the cafeteria with renewed determination. She wasn't giving up, she just didn't know what move to make next. If only there were a straightforward solution, someone with resources who actually cared. But her past taught her caution. Men who promised solutions often extracted a price she couldn't afford to pay. On her way back up, she nearly collided with a tall, stylish man stepping off the elevator. He wore a tailored suit and an air of anxious impatience. Alex Sterling, no doubt. He seemed startled to see a nurse hustling by so directly. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and Chloe sensed a forced politeness in his manner. "Excuse me," he said curtly, then strode away, tapping urgently on his phone. Chloe watched him move toward Vincent Moore's room. Something about his demeanor unsettled her. She had glimpsed enough anxious relatives in her career to know the difference between genuine worry and performance. A text from Sarah flashed on her screen. Sterling's heading back up. People say he's pressuring Dr. Ramirez for updates. Tread carefully. Chloe drew in a steadying breath. She nodded to herself, resolving to remain calm. Sooner or later, she'd be assigned to check on Vincent. She might even have to interact with Alex. The last thing she needed was more tension, but it seemed determined to find her. Between Henderson's threats and an obviously high-stakes power dynamic swirling around Vincent Moore's bed, Chloe felt as if she were caught in a whirlwind. Yet as her shift wore on, she reminded herself of the vow she'd made when she first became a nurse, to do her best for every patient, no matter who they were or what baggage they brought. Little did she know how severely this vow would soon be tested by a man who might not even be truly comatose, and by the unstoppable demands of her own heart. Around 9 that evening, the ward finally quieted to a manageable lull. Chloe had been assigned her new schedule. Among her designated patients was Vincent Moore. She glanced at the computer screen, noticing his name highlighted in the rotation. The rest of the staff were likely relieved not to be saddled with the extra stress of a VIP. Still, she couldn't shake the slight flutter in her stomach. Her first official task was a routine check on Mr. Moore's vitals and comfort. She paused outside his door, smoothing the wrinkles in her scrubs, then stepped inside. The overhead lights were dim, and a single lamp at the far end of the room cast a warm glow over the bed. Vincent lay there, seemingly unaware of the world. Machines beeped in a steady rhythm, everything in normal ranges. Chloe adjusted a stethoscope around her neck and approached. "Good evening, Mr. Moore," she said softly, more from habit than expectation. Gently, she checked his pulse, her touch professional yet careful. As her fingers pressed lightly against his wrist, she became aware of her own breathing, slightly faster than usual. There was something about tending to someone so powerful, but in such a vulnerable position, that felt oddly intimate. For a moment, she studied his still features. Despite the bandage on his forehead, he looked strangely peaceful, like a man taking a long, overdue rest. She made a few notes on her digital tablet, heart rate stable, blood pressure normal. It was all routine, except for the uneasy thought lingering in the back of her mind. Why was he in this state? As she adjusted the IV line, the door creaked open behind her. Alex Sterling peered in, wearing the same crisp suit as earlier. His eyes flicked briefly to Chloe. "You're his nurse now?" he asked, his tone clipped. "Yes," Chloe replied, keeping her professional composure. "May I help you with something?" He stepped in, gaze fixed on Vincent. "I'm just ensuring everything's fine." The hesitation in his voice suggested he was monitoring more than Vincent's medical condition. After a few seconds, he forced a tight smile. "Carry on." Chloe nodded, but couldn't escape the sensation that something in the air felt staged. Once Alex left, she inhaled deeply and forced her focus back to her patient. Gently lifting Vincent's hand, she checked for any swelling or marks. The fleeting thought crossed her mind. Did his fingers just twitch? She paused, peering closely. Probably her imagination. Still, it was enough to make her heart skip a beat. Shortly before her shift ended, she got another call from Mr. Henderson. She quickly stepped into a quiet alcove near a vending machine. "Mr. Henderson," she began, her voice hushed. "I'm working as fast as I can." Her heartbeat hammered in her ears. This was it. He was probably going to push an ultimatum. His tone was brusque. "You have days, Chloe, days. After that, I sign with someone else. I'm done waiting." When the call ended, she leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. A wave of desperation washed over her. She visualized the garden in spring, the neat rows of vegetables, the bright murals the kids had painted, the sense of hope that space offered, all slipping away unless she found a miracle. An hour later, she returned to Moore's room for a final check. Darkness had settled outside, the city lights glowing through the tall windows. She moved quietly, scanning the monitors, verifying medication. The steady beep of the heart monitor was almost soothing. A swirl of emotions pummeled her thoughts: fear for the Bloom project, frustration at Henderson's unrelenting demands, and an inexplicable sense of responsibility toward this silent CEO. Before she left, she rested one hand lightly on the bed rail. "Mr. Moore," she whispered, though she doubted he heard, "I hope you wake up soon. Someone like you probably has the power to fix all sorts of problems. But I guess it's too much to hope for." Her own words surprised her. She never mixed personal hopes with a patient's care. Turning off the lamp, she stepped back into the corridor. Little did she know that, in the days to come, this very patient would indeed alter her future in ways she couldn't have imagined. For now, though, she only felt the heaviness of exhaustion and the faint flicker of yearning, as if on the brink of something she could neither name nor foresee. Early the next morning, Chloe made her rounds with deliberate composure. The door to Vincent Moore's private suite was cracked open, so she peered in before entering. It was nearly dawn, the pale light of sunrise slipping through tall windows. On the bed, Vincent lay in his usual stillness, monitors beeping in a steady cadence. Evelyn Hayes, his poised and elegant assistant, stood near the window, speaking in low tones on her phone. Chloe cleared her throat gently. Evelyn hung up, her expression one of cautious warmth. "Good morning," she offered, stepping aside to allow Chloe access. "I'm sorry, I was trying not to disturb you or him." Chloe nodded, moving to check Vincent's IV drip and vital signs. "No problem," she replied, scanning the digital monitor. "We appreciate your discretion." Evelyn quietly observed Chloe's routine, then spoke in a measured tone. "I'm grateful for your care. Mr. Moore, Vincent, he normally doesn't slow down for anything. It's strange to see him like this." She swallowed hard, hinting at a deeper concern than mere professional duty. Chloe finished noting down Vincent's stats, then turned to Evelyn. "He's stable, physically, but without a clear neurological explanation, all we can do is watch and wait." She hesitated, sensing Evelyn's genuine worry. "You seem relieved he's away from corporate stress. Is it because of Alex Sterling?" Evelyn's eyebrows rose. "You're perceptive. Let's just say Alex has been a bit too eager to step into Vincent's shoes. As the CEO's assistant, I see patterns. I don't trust Alex's motives for a second." Chloe nodded, recalling how Sterling had hovered in the doorway the night before, radiating tension. "I only know him from a few brief encounters, but something about him makes me uneasy." Evelyn offered a thin, wry smile. "Join the club." She shifted her weight, glancing at Vincent's still form. "Alex wants full control. If Vincent stays incapacitated, Alex can push decisions that Vincent would normally oppose." Chloe absorbed this. It felt oddly personal for a conversation with a patient's assistant, but Evelyn seemed sincere, the sort of sincerity Chloe rarely associated with people in positions of corporate power. Still, she reminded herself that she was just a nurse doing her job. "I'll keep a professional eye on things," she finally said, keeping her tone even. Before Evelyn could respond, Dr. Ramirez walked in, greeting them both. He cast an approving glance at Chloe's chart notes. "Good work," he murmured, then turned to Evelyn. "Ms. Hayes, if I may ask, do you have any insight into Vincent's usual health routine? Stress levels, previous medical issues, anything might help." Evelyn shook her head. "He's notoriously private, but healthy as far as I know. Even if he works crazy hours, he doesn't usually get sick. This is unprecedented." Chloe listened, her curiosity quietly piqued. After Dr. Ramirez left, Evelyn lingered. "Ms. Bennett, I've heard from a colleague that you run a community garden, the Bloom Project, something about at-risk teenagers." Chloe stiffened slightly, The mention of her project from a near stranger took her by surprise. "Yes, I do. It's just a local initiative," she said carefully, not wanting to overshare. She'd been burned before. Evelyn's expression turned thoughtful. "I did a little reading. It seems like a wonderful cause. Are you having trouble keeping it going?" She must have noticed the flicker of apprehension on Chloe's face, because she held up her hand in a calming gesture. "I'm only asking because Vincent has a soft spot for philanthropic efforts, despite his hard-nosed reputation in business. If he wakes up, maybe he—" "Let's not get ahead of ourselves," Chloe interrupted, her tone polite but firm. The last thing she wanted was false hope. "The garden's important to me, but I can't rely on hypothetical solutions." Evelyn nodded, stepping back. "I respect that." She checked her phone. "I need to handle a few urgent calls." "Let me know if anything changes with Vincent." Chloe watched her leave, feeling a subtle shift within. Maybe, just maybe, not everyone linked to Vincent Moore was manipulative. A tentative sense of kinship flickered. Evelyn Hayes, an unexpected ally who seemed to truly care about her boss's well-being and, surprisingly, about Chloe's community mission. For the first time in days, Chloe dared to consider that help could come from angles she'd never have predicted. Late that afternoon, the grey skies over Manhattan opened into a gentle drizzle. Chloe maneuvered through the hospital's main corridor, balancing a tray of supplies while mentally tallying everything she needed to finish before her shift ended. Raindrops tapped the wide windows, mirroring the steady thrum of her own anxious heartbeat. This was the day Mr. Henderson had threatened to finalize a deal on the land if she couldn't propose a funding solution. Pausing at a water dispenser, Chloe let out a tired breath. She hated feeling cornered. Her entire career, she'd prided herself on facing challenges head-on. Yet here she was, faced with the possible end of the Bloom Project. She pictured the bright faces of the teenagers who found solace in that garden. Would she have to tell them it was gone? Sarah Chen found her there, a look of concern shadowing her eyes. "Hey," she said softly, "how are you holding up?" Chloe swallowed, handing the tray of supplies to a passing nurse. "Henderson's giving me hours, maybe a day. If I don't come up with something solid, he'll sign with those developers. It's not looking good, Sarah." Sarah touched her arm. "Chloe, I know how strong you are, but maybe it's time to consider other avenues. Evelyn, for instance, she seems sympathetic. Couldn't you ask if more industries might—" Chloe cut her off with a small shake of her head. "No, I can't go begging from them. You know my history. I swore never to rely on high-powered people again after what happened with my ex." The memory of betrayal still sat raw beneath her calm facade. "I'll figure something else out, but I won't beg." A page crackled overhead for Nurse Bennett to report to the VIP ward. Chloe pressed her lips together, stifling the storm of anxiety that threatened to leak into her work. "Duty calls," she muttered. When she arrived outside Vincent Moore's suite, she found the door partially open again. Slipping inside, she noticed the low overhead light highlighting the curve of his shoulders beneath a blanket. Once more, she noted how little his condition made sense. No major injuries, yet complete unresponsiveness. She set down the files on a nearby counter, her eyes drifting over the machinery that charted his vitals. "Mr. Moore," she murmured as she checked the drip rate. "I might have scoffed at the idea of wealthy rescuers before, but I can't lie, I'm desperate." She paused, startled by her own candor in speaking to a man who likely heard nothing, but the desperation welled in her. "If you could just open your eyes and tell me I'm not crazy for believing the garden matters." A gentle knock on the doorframe made her jump. Evelyn Hayes, face softened by concern, stood there. "Sorry," Evelyn whispered, stepping into the room. "I was looking for you. Dr. Ramirez said you might be here." Chloe regained her composure. "Is something wrong?" Evelyn shook her head. "No, just thought you should know. Mr. Sterling is in the building again. I overheard him mentioning a new press release about Vincent's condition, something about him urging the board to approve major real estate expansions without delay." Chloe tensed. "He's using Vincent's incapacitation to further his own agenda. Wonderful." She exhaled slowly. "Does Dr. Ramirez know?" "Probably," Evelyn said. "But Sterling moves fast. If he gets the board to sign off on certain deals, by the time Vincent wakes up, if he wakes up, it might be too late to reverse them." Chloe's gaze flicked to Vincent, peaceful yet precarious. Then she squared her shoulders. "Well, it's not my business to meddle in corporate maneuvering, but if Sterling disrupts patient care, I'll step in." Evelyn offered a grateful nod before stepping away to take a phone call. Chloe lingered, her heart rattling in her chest. She felt the pull of a choice forming in her mind, either remain on the sidelines, quietly hoping for a miracle, or risk more involvement. That new involvement might mean leaning on Evelyn, maybe even Moore's massive corporate resources if it came to that. In a strange, involuntary leap of faith, she found herself wishing that Vincent Moore would recover soon, not just for his own sake, but for the sake of her beloved garden. That night, as she left the hospital, the rain still pattered on the sidewalks. She pulled her coat tighter, a swirl of conflicted determination rising within. Sometimes, she realized, you have to step outside your comfort zone, even if it means letting old wounds re-expose themselves. The following days brought a whirlwind of unexpected dynamics to Chloe's typically methodical routine. The Presbyterian Hospital's top floor was now guarded by heightened security, presumably arranged by Evelyn to control the steady flow of curious reporters who hovered outside. Chloe found it both relieving and stressful. Relieving because outsiders were kept at bay. Stressful because it highlighted just how significant Vincent Moore's presence was. One afternoon, as she returned from lunch, she spotted Alex Sterling stepping into the elevator. He wore his usual immaculate suit, but carried a briefcase that seemed overly stuffed. Before the doors closed, she caught his tense glance. Her gut twisted at the sight. She sensed trouble, though she couldn't pinpoint how it might affect her directly. Still, her instincts nudged her to stay vigilant. Upstairs, the corridor outside Vincent's suite was unusually calm. A single security guard stood watch, nodding politely as Chloe arrived. She found Evelyn inside, organizing folders on a makeshift desk. "What's all this?" Chloe asked, scanning the neatly stacked documents. Evelyn grimaced. "Financial reports, property portfolios, Vincent's entire empire in bullet points. I'm trying to monitor them for suspicious activity. If Alex tries to push anything shady through the pipeline, I want to know before it's too late." Chloe set her bag aside. "That's quite the responsibility. You're basically acting as his gatekeeper." "More like a temporary shield," Evelyn corrected. Then her gaze drifted to Vincent, still unmoving. "I'd do anything to keep Moore Industries from falling into the wrong hands, and to make sure Vincent's philanthropic interests remain intact." Chloe's eyes flicked to a folder labeled Community Outreach. She wondered if the Bloom Project might fit into such a category, but she bit her tongue. She knew better than to get her hopes up without reason. "I'll check his vitals," she said quietly, edging toward the bed. The monitors showed the familiar stable patterns, heart rate, oxygen saturation, everything unremarkable. She folded down the blanket slightly, examining the bruises along his arms. They'd faded some, suggesting healing. He looked more like a man in a deep sleep than someone comatose from a trauma. The puzzle nagged at her. Frowning, she adjusted an electrode, stepping back only when she saw no medical anomaly. Evelyn joined her. "You think there's a chance he's faking?" The question hung in the air like a whispered confession. Chloe's eyes widened, an instant rush of denial crossing her mind. "That would be unbelievably reckless," she whispered, glancing at the door. "Besides, a coma is no joke. Who would risk the complications just to avoid corporate drama?" Yet even as she said it, a strange thought surfaced. Could someone like Vincent Moore orchestrate such a thing? Evelyn pressed her lips together, leaving the question unanswered. After a moment, she placed a gentle hand on Chloe's shoulder. "I wanted to ask you something that's been on my mind." She hesitated. "If Vincent wakes up and he hears about your garden, he might support it. He's got a reputation for occasional big gestures, but I need your consent. Would you want me to mention it?" Chloe felt her heart skip a beat. "It's complicated," she began slowly. Yes, the project needs help, but I've had experiences." She trailed off, the memory of her past betrayal stinging fresh. Then Mr. Henderson's ultimatum flashed in her mind. She sighed. "Look, I wouldn't reject genuine help if it's freely offered, but I don't want to rely on pity or some PR stunt." Evelyn nodded, her expression understanding. "I promise you, I wouldn't let it become a publicity fiasco." They both turned as the security guard at the door cleared his throat. "Ms. Hayes, Mr. Sterling just arrived," he announced grimly. Evelyn gathered her folders. "Showtime." Chloe watched her leave, the door closing behind them. She glanced at Vincent one last time, the monitor's beeps echoing in the quiet. Despite her reluctance, she realized she'd already stepped into this strange new world, a corporate battlefield swirling around a man who lay silent, yet possibly aware. Whatever path lay ahead, it would challenge her boundaries in ways she never expected, and a small but growing voice inside insisted that she'd need every bit of courage to navigate it. Midweek arrived with the air thick with anticipation. Chloe knew her shift wouldn't be routine when Dr. Ramirez pulled her aside first thing in the morning. "I want you to be the primary nurse, overseeing Mr. Moore's condition," he said, his tone respectful but firm. "You're meticulous, and you've managed high-stress patients before." She nodded, bracing herself for an even closer connection to the swirling corporate tensions. Part of her wanted to refuse. She had enough on her plate with the Bloom Project, but a stronger sense of duty prevailed. "I understand," she said simply. Shortly afterward, as she headed toward Vincent's suite, she came across Evelyn Hayes in the hallway. Evelyn held a sleek tablet filled with data points Chloe couldn't decipher at a glance. "I was looking for you," Evelyn said. "Alex Sterling's been pestering the medical team again. He wants details about Vincent's recovery timeline. It's as if he expects us to schedule an official wake-up date." Chloe rolled her eyes. "That's not how medicine works, but I doubt he cares about the actual science." Evelyn nodded gravely. "He doesn't. He's just waiting for a chance to push more corporate moves through. The second the board thinks Vincent won't return, Alex can make certain expansion's permanent." They turned the corner, nearly bumping into a woman carrying a vase of flowers. A polite apology later, Chloe noticed a faint tension in Evelyn's posture. "You okay?" "Yes," Evelyn replied after a moment. "I'm just unsettled by how easily Alex manipulates people. If he's not stopped, he might gut our philanthropic budgets. Vincent always insisted on allotting a portion of profits to community grants. That could vanish if Alex takes over." Chloe paused outside Vincent's door, her fingers gripping the handle. "Then I suppose we'll have to keep Vincent's place warm until he comes back." Inside, Vincent lay as before, still, with a faint expression of peace. Chloe took his vitals while Evelyn stood by. The numbers were steady, though oddly perfect for someone who'd been unconscious for so long. It fueled Chloe's growing suspicion that not all was as it seemed. After finishing her notes, she turned to Evelyn. "So, what's your plan if Sterling tries to strong-arm the board?" Evelyn's lips pressed into a determined line. I'm gathering evidence, documents, emails, anything that shows how he's acting against Vincent's directives. If Vincent wakes up, we'll be able to prove Alex overstepped. But if this drags on indefinitely, the board might side with Alex by default. Chloe exhaled. It's a shame Vincent can't just open his eyes and end the power struggle. Meanwhile, I've got my own crisis. My project's about to get bulldozed, literally, if I don't find a donor or sponsor. Guess we're both racing against time. Evelyn's gaze flicked toward Chloe. It's possible we can help each other. I mean, I can't promise anything, but if we block Alex's moves, Vincent's philanthropic funds remain intact. And that might include grants for smaller initiatives like yours. Heat crept up Chloe's neck. She appreciated the offer but felt uneasy about tying her garden's fate to Vincent's fortune. I'm not comfortable leaning on someone who's basically unconscious and can't sign off personally. Understood, Evelyn replied gently, but keep in mind, if he were awake, he might very well approve it. Don't assume it's just charity. He invests in projects that make a tangible difference. Chloe pursed her lips, mulling that over. She remembered the wide eyes of the teens who visited the garden, the sense of pride they got from watching things grow. Could aligning with Vincent's philanthropic vision, assuming he eventually woke up, be a lifeline? It was a possibility she couldn't ignore forever. Just then, her phone pinged. A short text from Sarah. Henderson furious. Says, final notice. You okay? Her pulse quickened. She locked her phone, inhaling shakily. Evelyn recognized the apprehension in her face. Is everything all right? Chloe slipped her phone into her pocket. No, but I guess I'll have to figure it out, right? She pushed her shoulders back, directing her gaze at Vincent Moore's silent form. If there was a chance he was listening, she silently pleaded, wake up, please. If not for yourself, then for all of us who need you to speak. Close to midnight, the ward was eerily quiet, with most lights dimmed to let patients rest. Chloe paused by the large windows at the end of the corridor, taking in the glittering New York skyline. Behind her, the hush of the hospital stretched like a calm surface of water. She'd just finished administering medications to Vincent, running through the last checks on his vitals. Stable, as always, maybe too stable. She couldn't leave yet. A text from Mr. Henderson gnawed at her mind. No more delays. My patience is done. The words stung with finality. She felt cornered, though she still fought the creeping sense of defeat. Tonight, she decided she needed a few minutes alone to gather her thoughts. Heading back to Vincent's suite, she found the corridor empty. Cracking open the door, she slipped inside quietly, half expecting Evelyn to be reviewing documents. But the room was vacant, except for Vincent lying in the soft glow of a bedside lamp. The steady beep of his monitors was almost soothing. Chloe settled into a chair beside the bed. She'd seen countless patients, but somehow this man felt different. Maybe it was because the tension around his situation bled into hers, or maybe because she couldn't reconcile his powerful reputation with his current vulnerability. As she observed the faint lines around his eyes, she felt an odd pang of empathy. Without really intending to, she reached for her phone and dialed Sarah. It rang twice before her friend picked up in a groggy voice. Chloe, everything okay? Clutching the phone, Chloe kept her voice low. I'm at Vincent Moore's room. Mr. Henderson just gave me his final ultimatum. I can't let the garden die like this. She closed her eyes, summoning the courage to speak words she usually kept buried. Sarah, you know how much that place means. It saved those kids, in a way, gave them a chance. Sarah's gentle exhale crackled over the line. I know, but you can't do this alone. If you can't find a financial backer... Chloe's voice broke, tears pricking her eyes. I've exhausted every lead. There's no one left. Henderson will sell, and I'll have to watch developers turn the garden into more apartments. She glanced at Vincent, imagining him hearing every word, though logically she knew better. But something about his presence beckoned her to keep talking. "The Bloom Project is the best thing I've done in my life, Sarah. I've poured my soul into it, my savings, my time, my heart. I don't want pity, but I'm so tired. Every day, I put on a strong face here at the hospital. But inside, I'm scared it's all for nothing." Sarah's voice softened. "Listen, maybe Evelyn is right. If Vincent were awake, he might invest. He's done philanthropic work before. Did you read about the children's center in Brooklyn he funded last year?" Chloe sniffed back tears, her shoulders trembling. "I read something about it. Yeah." She paused, the weight of her pride battling her desperation. "But how can I trust that? And he's not awake. I'm basically stuck unless some miracle happens. God, I sound pathetic." "You don't," Sarah said firmly. "You sound human. You've been carrying this alone for too long. Maybe it's time to let someone else help, even if that someone is an unconscious CEO with a questionable reputation. You deserve to save that garden." They talked a few more minutes, Chloe's voice cracking when she admitted how overwhelmed she felt. Finally, with a faint sense of relief, she said goodnight. She hung up and sat there, letting the tears flow silently. She didn't notice how her voice had risen during the call, how the door was slightly ajar, or how the glow from the hallway spilled onto the floor. In the hush that followed, Chloe pressed her hands to her cheeks, feeling drained. She whispered into the stillness, "I'm so sorry for dumping all this on you, Mr. Moore. You can't even respond, but I can't keep this up by myself." Outside the room, a faint movement shifted the light, as if someone walked past or paused. But Chloe was too lost in her grief to notice. If she had looked up, she might have seen a barely perceptible twitch in Vincent's fingers, and she might have realized that the words she believed were floating into emptiness had, in fact, found a listener, and lit the spark that would soon upend her world. Vincent Moore couldn't recall ever feeling this conflicted in his life. For days, he'd remained perfectly still, feigning a coma, forced to suppress every natural urge to move or speak. Each carefully measured breath now felt heavier, especially after overhearing Chloe's desperate phone call. He hadn't meant to intrude on her privacy, but the moment she walked in that evening and poured out her heart, he found himself captive to her words, more than to his own ruse. Late that night, when the hospital corridors were quiet, Vincent finally decided he would not remain idle any longer. His company's future was precarious under Alex Sterling's plotting, and now he'd discovered Chloe's world, the garden she cherished, was in just as much peril. Lying there, eyes closed, he planned his next move. First, he would observe Alex a bit longer, gather evidence of his betrayal, but above all, he needed to help Chloe. The sincerity in her voice and the weight of her struggles had touched him in a place he barely acknowledged existed. In his silent state, Vincent began devising signals to communicate with Evelyn. For years, she'd been more than just his assistant. She was his confidant, someone who knew how to read even his slightest gesture. One by one, in the following days, he made subtle attempts, a minor twitch of his finger when he heard her voice, a delicate squeeze on her hand if she asked a question quietly. Though it was risky, he counted on Evelyn's discretion and intuition. On the third evening after Chloe's phone call, Evelyn lingered in his room, flipping through the thick folder of company documents. She spoke to him in a low voice, unaware that he was, in fact, listening intently. "Vincent," she murmured, "Sterling's pushing for an immediate vote on the real estate expansions. They want to sign off within days. If you don't recover soon—" She trailed off, resting her hand on his. Gathering his courage, Vincent pressed his fingers faintly against hers, a silent confirmation that he could hear her. Evelyn's breath caught. She stilled, then carefully looked around to ensure no one else was present. Leaning down, she whispered, "Is that you, Vincent? Are you telling me you're all right?" A slight second squeeze in response. Stunned, she took a moment to compose herself. "Oh my God," she said under her breath. "I thought... Wait, is this on purpose?" Yet she knew better than to bombard him with endless questions right away. Slowly, piece by piece, she began to piece it together. Perhaps he suspected Sterling's betrayal and used this coma as a strategy to see who was truly loyal. With trembling hands, Evelyn scribbled a quick note on the back of a lab results sheet. "Why keep faking it? Do you plan to confront Alex soon?" She slid the paper near Vincent's hand, uncertain if he could somehow respond. He must have heard her approach and recognized the sound of pen against paper, but he couldn't move so obviously. Instead, he shifted his index finger a few millimeters, a near-invisible signal he hoped she'd catch. She did. Evelyn's heart pounded, but she forced herself to appear calm. Carefully, she slid the paper out of sight. Later that night, she typed a short text to her own private email, noting everything that happened. If Vincent was faking, he had his reasons, and she would support him, but they had precious little time. And one more thing was certain: Chloe's emotional revelation had stirred him. Evelyn suspected he intended to help her with the Bloom Project, though how he would do so remained unclear. Before she left, Evelyn bent low to his ear. "I'll do my part," she promised, "but don't wait too long. Alex is making moves you won't like. And Chloe, she's about to lose something precious. I can see how it matters to you. If there was ever a time to act, it's now." Vincent held still, every fiber of his body coiled with anticipation. He couldn't break character yet, but inside, his resolve hardened. He would soon reveal the truth, and in doing so, he would not only halt Alex's schemes, but also offer Chloe the lifeline she needed, whether she trusted him or not. Chloe rushed through the hospital's main doors that morning with a palpable sense of dread. She'd stayed up late the night before, scouring every contact on her phone, hoping to find anyone, an old colleague, a charitable organization, a former sponsor, who might help secure the Bloom Project's land. Her efforts had yielded only polite refusals and sympathetic regrets. Now, with Mr. Henderson's final deadline looming, each step felt weighted by urgency. When she arrived at the nurse's station, Sarah flagged her down. "Chloe," she said, voice taut, "Henderson called the hospital looking for you. He's threatening to send eviction notices by tomorrow if you don't have a concrete plan." Chloe's stomach knotted. "I've tried everything," she muttered, frustration creeping into her tone. "And I'm not about to start groveling for some miracle. I'm just out of options." She forced herself to breathe slowly. "All right, let's get through this shift first. Then I'll figure out my next move." Her duties brought her to Vincent Moore's room sooner than she expected. Outside his door, she paused, steadying herself. Strangely, she found it easier to speak her truths in his presence, even if he couldn't hear, or so she thought. Last night's confession had felt almost freeing, though it left her raw and tired. Exhaling quietly, she entered. Evelyn stood by Vincent's bedside, tapping on a tablet. The assistant looked more focused than usual, brow furrowed. Chloe offered a polite nod before checking Vincent's vitals. Again, stable. Perfectly stable. It was so odd, so surreal. Chloe's chest tightened with the thought that if he truly were in a coma, no one could guess when he'd emerge. The timing couldn't be worse. Evelyn spoke in a low voice. "Morning, Chloe. How are you holding up?" "You look exhausted." Her tone held genuine concern. Chloe forced a small shrug. "I've been better. Henderson's about to sign away my community garden, so it's not exactly a restful time." She hesitated, then added, "That's my own problem, though. I'm still a professional here." Evelyn gave her a faint smile. "You don't have to separate the two entirely. Sometimes personal and professional worlds intersect more than we expect. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. If Vincent were awake, I truly believe he'd want to help. I've mentioned your garden to him in passing before all this happened. He was intrigued. Chloe's eyebrows rose. You told him about it? A flicker of hope and embarrassment mingled in her chest. When? Right before his accident, Evelyn explained. He was looking into a set of community outreach grants. Yours was a prime candidate, just never got finalized. A tumult of emotions flared inside Chloe. Relief that maybe her project had once been on the radar, and bitterness that fate had stepped in at exactly the wrong moment. She dropped her gaze to Vincent's still face, a pang of longing surging through her. If only, she said softly, more to herself than to Evelyn. Suddenly, Sarah burst in, eyes wide with alarm. Chloe, Dr. Ramirez is looking for you. Someone from the press is snooping around. They're asking about Vincent Moore's condition, and apparently they know you're his primary nurse. Chloe stiffened. The last thing she needed was more pressure. The press. Great. I'll go see what Dr. Ramirez wants. She turned back to Evelyn. Is everything okay here? Evelyn nodded. I'll keep watch. Go handle the reporters. As Chloe hurried out, her phone buzzed. Another message from Henderson. Final extension ends tomorrow morning. No more games, her pulse hammered. She glanced at the text while practically jogging down the corridor. Everything in her life felt like it was spiraling out of control. Her project, Vincent's suspicious condition, Alex Sterling's meddling, and now the press. She had less than 24 hours before her garden slipped through her fingers forever, and she was out of strategies. Unless, by some miracle, Vincent Moore opened his eyes and changed everything. Unbeknownst to her, behind the closed door, Vincent's eyelids fluttered briefly as though stirred by an unseen force. His mind raced with the knowledge he'd gathered. Time was running short, for him and for Chloe, and he would not let either of them lose. All day long, Vincent stayed motionless, ignoring the growing urge to test his limbs or speak up prematurely. He'd quietly calculated that if he chose the wrong moment to awaken, Alex Sterling might maneuver around him anyway. But Chloe's phone call, her sobs, her confessions, played in his head like a loop he couldn't shut off. Every word fueled his determination. That night, the hospital lights dimmed once more. Chloe, overwhelmed by another fruitless round of calls for sponsorship, lingered in Vincent's room after finishing her final checks. She glanced around, relieved to see no one else present. The hush enveloped them like a cocoon. She sank into the chair beside his bed, rubbing her temples. Mr. Moore, I don't know why I keep doing this, she murmured, voice thick with emotion. You can't hear me, and yet I feel less alone when I talk to you. Today was awful. Henderson's done waiting. By tomorrow morning, I'll probably be locked out of my own project. That's it, the end. Her voice trembled, and Vincent wished more than anything that he could simply squeeze her hand, give her a sign. He listened intently as she unburdened herself once again, detailing the heartbreak of losing the Bloom Project and the guilt she felt for letting so many young people down. The raw honesty struck him deeper than any corporate betrayal he'd faced. This woman wasn't angling for money or power. She just wanted to keep a safe haven alive for kids who had nowhere else to turn. It was then he heard the words that sparked everything. If you were awake, maybe you'd help. Evelyn says you used to invest in places like mine. She sighed heavily, but I guess I'll never know. Vincent's heart pounded. Enough. He had enough intel to expose Alex. Enough time had passed to reveal his hand. He waited until Chloe finished her monologue and stood to leave. Then he made his move. Just as she turned to gather her belongings, his left hand twitched more visibly this time. He willed his index finger to curl, a slight motion against the bedsheet. It was small, but Chloe noticed. She froze, staring in disbelief. Mr. Moore. He did it again, mustering a faint groan from deep in his throat. Every muscle in his body protested the sudden break from stillness. But he forced himself further. His eyelids fluttered once, twice, then opened a crack. Chloe gasped, nearly dropping the folder she held. "Oh my God, you're awake!" The beeping on the heart monitor spiked as Vincent's pulse quickened. He struggled for breath, trying to remain calm. He had to make this look like a natural awakening, yet he was fully aware. He parted his lips but couldn't form words immediately. His throat felt parched after days of inactivity. Fumbling, Chloe pressed the call button. "We need a doctor!" she exclaimed, her voice a mix of shock and sudden hope. Tears welled in her eyes, not just from relief, but also from an overwhelming sensation she couldn't name. In seconds, nurses and Dr. Ramirez rushed in. A torrent of frantic instructions filled the room. Check vitals, elevate his head, clear his airways. Vincent let them fuss, blinking against the bright overhead light. His gaze flicked toward Chloe, who stood at the edge, almost trembling with emotion. In that moment, he wanted to tell her everything. He heard her phone call, understood her predicament, and was going to fix it, if she'd let him. But he had to be methodical. First, he had to handle Alex Sterling. Then he would reveal how he'd heard every plea, every word. The energy in the room crackled with tension. "Doctor..." Ramirez quizzed Vincent gently, testing neurological function, while Evelyn ran in moments later, covering her mouth in astonishment. Yet a subtle, knowing light shone in her eyes. Vincent recognized it. She suspected something bigger was at play. For Chloe, the surprise and relief were nearly overwhelming. She reached for his hand in a purely professional gesture, expecting nothing in return. But Vincent managed a small, purposeful squeeze, locking eyes with her for the briefest instant. As she blinked back tears, she realized that this moment was bigger than a routine medical awakening. Something surprising was about to happen. And somehow, she was at the center of it. The next morning, the VIP suite buzzed with an almost electric energy. Nurses came and went, checking Vincent Moore's vitals, each remarking on how remarkable it was that he'd awakened with such stable signs. Dr. Ramirez stood beside the bed, performing a final exam, while Chloe hovered near the monitors. Vincent winced at the bright daylight streaming through the windows, but managed to push himself upright against the pillows. His throat still felt raw. Evelyn and Alex Sterling arrived just as Dr. Ramirez was concluding his check. Alex looked oddly triumphant at first, as if expecting to take immediate control of the narrative, but Vincent's posture and the flash in his eyes suggested something else entirely. Dr. Ramirez nodded approvingly. "Your vitals are excellent. We'll need to do more tests, but you seem fully conscious. Rest is essential, though. Let's not rush anything." Vincent cleared his throat. "Thank you, Doctor." His voice was raspy but firm. The entire room seemed to inhale at once. No one had heard him speak for days. Then he fixed his gaze on Alex, who stood near the foot of the bed with a smug grin. "Alex," Vincent said slowly, "I hear you've been quite busy." Alex's grin wavered. Yes, I've been running things in your absence. It's been challenging, but we've..." Vincent held up a hand, silencing him. "We'll talk about that soon. For now, I'd like to speak to Nurse Bennett. Privately." His tone brooked no argument. Chloe's heart lurched at the sound of her name. Dr. Ramirez, sensing the tension, gestured for everyone else to step out. Evelyn shot Vincent a wary but supportive look, following Alex into the corridor. Chloe hesitated, her nerves jangling. Finally, the door clicked shut, leaving her alone with Vincent for the first time since his awakening. She approached, trying to keep her voice steady. "Are you in pain, Mr. Moore? Should I fetch Dr. Ramirez, or..." He shook his head lightly. "No, I'm fine." but there's something I need to tell you." His voice faltered for a moment, as though the weight of it all pressed on him. "I heard you, Chloe. Every night you came here, everything you said about the Bloom Project, about your struggles. I wasn't actually in a coma." Her eyes widened and her lips parted in stunned disbelief. For a moment, she couldn't process the words. The color drained from her cheeks. You were awake." Vincent exhaled, guilt lining his face. "Not from the beginning. At first, I was truly unconscious for a short while, but when I woke, I realized I could use this scenario to observe people's true colors. I suspected my vice president was undermining me. I never intended to eavesdrop on your private phone call, but I did. I'm sorry." Chloe's pulse thundered in her ears. "You lied. And you listened to everything." She hated how her voice quavered, how tears pricked her eyes, but the betrayal hit hard. All her confessions, her tears, he'd witnessed them in secret. "It wasn't meant to manipulate you," Vincent insisted, his voice thick. "I had no idea you'd share such personal things at my bedside. I couldn't break my cover without jeopardizing my plan to stop Alex." He ran a hand over his tired features. "But then I heard you talking about your garden, your phone call in tears. It changed everything." Chloe took a shaky step back. "Do you realize how humiliating that is for me? You listened as I poured out my soul, and you just pretended." "I'm trying to fix it now," he replied softly. "This morning, I announced to Evelyn that we'd secure the purchase of your project's land under Moore Industries. The Bloom Project won't be lost, Chloe. I promise you that." She stared at him, her chest a battlefield of anger, relief, and confusion. "You can't just swoop in and save me," she whispered, voice choked. "You fooled everyone. You fooled me." Vincent reached out, but she pulled away, tears brimming. "I know you feel betrayed," he said, despair in his eyes, "and I can't fix that overnight. All I can do is tell you I care about your dream and I won't let it die. Whether you hate me for it or not." Chloe's mind spun with clashing emotions, gratitude for his help, anger at his deception, vulnerability from being so exposed. She stumbled away, turning her back on him, heart racing. Outside the door, she heard the muffled voices of Evelyn and Alex arguing. Everything seemed to be converging at once. She swallowed hard, fighting tears. "I need time," she managed, before rushing out of the room, leaving Vincent to wonder if his well-intentioned lie had just destroyed the fragile connection they'd formed. Chloe half walked, half ran down the hallway, the sound of her own footsteps echoing in her ears. Sarah spotted her and hustled over, concern etched on her face. "Chloe, what's wrong? You look pale." Stopping near a quiet corner, Chloe dragged in a trembling breath. "Vincent Moore. He wasn't really comatose. He's been awake, listening this entire time." Sarah's eyes widened. "He faked it." Her voice dropped to a near whisper. Why would he do that? "Corporate espionage or something," Chloe muttered, swallowing back the sting in her throat. "He suspected his vice president was plotting against him, so he used the situation to figure out who he could trust." She pressed a hand to her temple. "And I confided everything, Sarah. He heard my most vulnerable moments. It feels like a violation. I'm so angry, but he said he wants to help me, help the garden." Sarah let out a slow exhale. "That's a lot to take in. Are you okay?" "No," Chloe admitted. "I'm furious. I feel exposed, and at the same time he's offering a solution to my biggest problem. I hate that I need what he's giving." Guilt gnawed at her chest. She recalled all those nights, all that raw emotion she'd spilled beside his bed. He'd soaked it in, silent and calculating, even if he claimed it wasn't meant to harm her. She craved a moment to process, but her phone buzzed. A text from Mr. Henderson. Heard a rumor more industries might buy. If that's true, we have a deal. Otherwise, it's done. Chloe's throat clenched. She turned off her phone, too overwhelmed to respond. Sarah, I need a breather, she said, forcing her feet to move. She found the nearest stairwell and sank onto one of the steps, burying her face in her hands. The quiet hum of the hospital receded to a dull roar. After a few minutes of letting tears trickle through her fingers, Chloe heard a gentle tap on the door. She glanced up to see Dr. Ramirez. He lowered himself to sit beside her on the step. He told me, the doctor said gently, about his deception and about wanting to help you. How are you holding up? Her voice trembled with suppressed emotion. I feel cheated, like my dignity was on display for his convenience. But also, I'm not naive. I know how crucial it is that he's willing to buy the land. That means saving the project, my project. Am I supposed to just accept it? Dr. Ramirez rested a hand on her shoulder. Only you can decide what's right for you, Chloe. I know you value your independence. But sometimes help is genuine, even if the path to get there was messy. He paused, letting her gather her thoughts. Ask yourself, would those kids prefer losing the garden or having it saved by an imperfect man? The weight of that question sank into her heart. She pictured the kids, like 15-year-old Andre, who often said the garden was the only place he felt safe. She recalled their bright smiles every time they discovered a new bud sprouting. The notion of letting them down tore at her. Footsteps approached, and suddenly Vincent appeared at the bottom of the stairwell. His face was etched with fatigue, both physical and emotional. Dr. Ramirez stood, offering Chloe a reassuring nod before stepping aside. Vincent slowly ascended to her step, careful not to tower over her. I'm sorry to disturb you, he said, voice subdued, but I couldn't wait. Alex is about to hold a press conference. I'm going to confront him publicly, set the record straight, and I wanted you to know this isn't just about corporate power. I've already instructed Evelyn to finalize the purchase of your garden's land, no matter what. Chloe pressed her lips together, heart pounding. You don't get it. It's not just about the land, it's how you betrayed my trust. He exhaled, nodding. I know. Let me prove I'm sincere. I'm not asking for gratitude. I only want to do the right thing. For you, for the kids who need that garden, and for my employees who need an honest leader. She looked away, tears brimming again. Then, remembering Dr. Ramirez's words, she asked in a trembling voice, and what if you regret this later? Vincent's expression softened. I won't. I'll sign legally binding documents. You'll keep full control of the Bloom project. I won't force changes or use it for PR stunts. Please, let me fix at least this part of what I've caused you to feel. A swirl of anger and hope churned in her chest. She inhaled, steadying her voice. Fine, but it doesn't erase how I feel about your deception. He nodded, solemn. I understand. A brittle silence followed. Then she gave a slight nod of her own. The garden would be saved. That much was sure. Whether her heart would ever trust him again was another question entirely. For now, the precarious mix of fury and relief was all she could manage. Vincent, seeming to sense her turmoil, quietly stepped aside, leaving her to collect herself before the battles yet to come. Chloe spent the remainder of that day dodging curious co-workers and sidestepping reporters who lingered by the hospital's main entrance. News had already spread that Vincent Moore, long rumored to be in a mysterious coma, had awakened and was planning a press conference. Outside, camera crews packed the sidewalk, hoping for a dramatic soundbite. Inside, Chloe struggled to piece together her tangled emotions. Mid-afternoon, she found a quiet corner near a rarely used meeting room. She desperately needed a breather. There, leaning against a bare wall, she closed her eyes and tried to steady the tremor in her hands. She couldn't stop replaying the moment Vincent confessed he'd been awake, hearing everything. The mortification churned in her stomach every time it crossed her mind. Her thoughts drifted further back to the old scars that had made her so wary in the first place. Years ago, her former partner, someone she'd dated seriously, had shown an interest in the Bloom Project when it was barely more than an idea in her journal. He'd promised funding, emotional support, a glorious future. Then, almost overnight, he vanished with funds from an early donation drive. She'd vowed never again to trust a wealthy benefactor or rely on someone else's goodwill. A faint scuff of shoes startled her. Evelyn Hayes stepped around the corner, face drawn with concern. "Sorry," she said softly, raising her palms in an apologetic gesture. "I saw you slip away. Are you okay?" Chloe let out a long exhale. "I've been better." She squared her shoulders, though her voice trembled slightly. "I'm just processing. One minute I was losing my garden, the next I'm saved by a man who tricked us all. My pride's not taking it well." Evelyn's expression softened. "I get it. Vincent can be single-minded when he wants to achieve something. He never meant to hurt you. But I realize that doesn't erase the feeling of betrayal." She paused. "Has he told you the next step for the garden?" Chloe shook her head. "We haven't talked details. He said more industries will purchase the land, then hand me full control. It's a dream scenario if I ignore the part where he listened in on my most private thoughts." Evelyn offered a sympathetic tilt of her head. "He feels terrible about that. I've known Vincent a long time. He doesn't open up easily, but I've never seen him this concerned about someone's feelings. I think he genuinely wants to make amends, not just throw money at the problem." Chloe's throat tightened. "It's not about money, it's about trust." She looked down at her shoes, tears threatening to surface. "I've been fooled before. I know what it's like to be left holding the pieces when a wealthy partner changes their mind." Evelyn nodded. "I won't pretend to understand exactly what you've been through, but I believe in your work, and I believe Vincent does too. Maybe you can give him a chance to prove it's not a passing whim." They stood in silence for a moment, the fluorescent lights humming overhead. Finally, Evelyn sighed. "I need to get back. Vincent's about to head to that press conference. He said he'll publicly address both Alex's wrongdoing and the purchase of your garden. I thought you'd want to know. He's also asked me to invite you. No pressure, but you can be there if you wish." Chloe's heart pounded. She pictured Alex's cunning smirk and Vincent's determined gaze. Did she really want to stand by while two corporate titans faced off? On the other hand, wasn't this about her garden too? "Thanks for letting me know," she managed, voice quiet. "I'm not sure if I'm ready to watch him spin a story about how he's my savior, but maybe it's time I saw the full picture." Evelyn gently squeezed Chloe's hand. "Whatever you decide, the press conference starts soon in the hospital's ground floor auditorium. Just come if you want to see how he handles this. And remember, you have people rooting for you." After Evelyn left, Chloe remained by the wall, inhaling the faint antiseptic scent of the hallway. Her chest felt tight, but her mind sparked with new resolve. Her scars were deep, but her garden was everything. If Vincent was sincere, perhaps this was a chance to protect the Bloom Project for good. And if he wasn't, she needed to know. Better to confront the truth now than be blindsided later. Half an hour later, Chloe slipped into the auditorium, sliding into a seat near the back. She wasn't sure what she expected, certainly not the sight of nearly every seat filled by hospital staff, reporters, and a handful of more industry's employees. The hush in the room was palpable as Vincent Moore stood at a small podium under the dim glow of the stage lights. He looked composed for a man who had just left a hospital bed, though a hint of fatigue still clung to the lines around his eyes. Alex Sterling perched off to the side, arms crossed, face set in an unreadable mask. Evelyn hovered nearby, tablet in hand, her gaze flicking between Vincent and the audience. Vincent cleared his throat, the microphone amplifying the rasp that lingered from days of disuse. "Thank you for coming," he began, voice measured. "First, I want to clarify my condition. Yes, I was involved in a car accident. The injuries were minor, and I—" He paused, eyes scanning the room until they found Chloe. "I made a choice to remain under observation for reasons I'll explain. I owe apologies to those who relied on my transparency." Alex's jaw tightened. Chloe gripped the sides of her chair, feeling the tension in the air. Vincent took a breath. "I had growing concerns about internal maneuvers at Moore Industries. Specifically, I suspected my vice president, Alex Sterling, was pushing deals that undermined our company's integrity and philanthropic commitments. I needed to see how certain parties would act if they believed I was out of commission indefinitely." A murmuring ripple swept through the crowd. Alex Sterling's lips thinned, but he didn't interrupt. Vincent continued, voice stronger now. "During this time, I discovered that some expansions were being rushed through the board without my approval. I also became aware of suspicious financial transfers that indicated potential misuse of company funds." At that, Alex snapped, "You can't prove that. This is slander." Vincent turned, his gaze cold. "I can. Evelyn Hayes has compiled records, emails, unauthorized documents bearing forged signatures. We'll be handing them to the board and our legal team. You were counting on my indefinite incapacity to push these deals through." Alex stood straighter, looking outraged, but he remained silent as flashbulbs flickered around the room. Vincent faced the audience again. "Moore Industries isn't perfect, but we've always believed in balancing profit with giving back. If we let greed overshadow that principle, we lose more than money. We lose our values." Chloe's heart pounded, each word resonating with the conversation she'd had with Evelyn. He was indeed taking a stand. Vincent glanced her way again, and she swallowed hard, her cheeks warming at the memory of all she'd confided. Then came the next bombshell. "On a related note, I want to announce an immediate acquisition, a piece of property in Queens used by the Bloom Project. We will secure this land to protect its function as a community garden for at-risk youth. The nurse who founded it," his voice dropped slightly, "showed me a level of compassion and dedication that opened my eyes to what truly matters. I intend to ensure this garden thrives." A collective ripple of interest moved through the crowd, cameras flashing again. Chloe's stomach twisted in a storm of emotions, gratitude, anger, embarrassment. She could almost feel the reporters scanning the auditorium, searching for the mysterious nurse. Alex's hand clenched into a fist. "This is absurd!" Vincent's response was swift. "What's absurd is using corporate power to crush a charitable venture. If you disagree, you're free to explain your position to the board." "I'm done letting you manipulate from the shadows." A beat of silence. Then the room erupted into voices calling questions, snapping photos, while the hospital's security stepped in to keep order. Under the staccato of camera shutters, Vincent maintained his composure, though his gaze flicked uneasily to Chloe's seat. She held still, her eyes locked on him. As staff ushered people out to control the chaos, Chloe rose, her heart still racing. This was the moment she dreaded and prayed for, her garden publicly secured. Yet at the cost of her privacy and her lingering sense of betrayal, summoning courage, she left the auditorium before reporters could corner her. She had no idea what she felt anymore, only that her life had changed in one unstoppable wave of revelations. And Vincent Moore stood at the eye of it all. Late that evening, after the hectic press conference, Chloe found the corridors of Presbyterian Hospital much quieter than usual. The reporters had mostly cleared out, leaving behind only the faint buzz of hospital life. She lingered in a small atrium on the ground floor, lit by soft overhead lights. A potted ficus stood in one corner, and she found herself focusing on its glossy leaves, seeking calm amid the turmoil in her chest. All day, she'd replayed Vincent's announcement in her mind. He'd effectively saved the Bloom Project right there in front of the media, exposing Alex's schemes and confirming the garden's future. She wanted to feel sheer relief, but her emotions were knotted by his deception. Could she truly accept his help and still feel proud of her own independence? Lost in thought, she almost didn't notice Vincent approaching, until she heard the subtle click of dress shoes. He wore a simple dress shirt, his posture bearing the exhaustion of a man who had just fought a public battle. Chloe took in a steady breath, readying herself for another confrontation. He stopped a few steps away. "I figured you might be here," he said softly, voice still recovering. "You left before I could find you after the press conference." Chloe crossed her arms, eyes fixed on the plant. "Guess I wasn't in the mood for more cameras or more speeches." Vincent nodded, stepping closer. "Understandable. I'm sorry about thrusting the garden into the spotlight without warning you first. I intended to speak with you, but everything happened so fast." She let out a slow exhale, finally meeting his gaze. "I appreciate that you saved it, I really do, but you need to understand, my pride is in pieces. I hate that I was so vulnerable in front of someone who was faking a coma." His eyes gleamed with remorse. "I know, and I realize an apology may not heal your hurt, but I'm going to keep apologizing anyway." He paused, letting silence fill the gap between them. "Is there anything you want me to do differently with the garden's acquisition? Any conditions or clarifications?" Her heart clenched. She didn't want to sabotage the help she desperately needed. "Just don't change what makes it special. The teens who come there need a place that feels theirs, not some corporate rebranding. Don't take away my autonomy in how it's run." Vincent rested a hand on the back of a nearby bench, nodding slowly. "You have my word. It's yours to manage as you see fit. We'll work out a legal framework that ensures that—" The sincerity in his voice gave her pause. For a moment, she studied his features, lines of fatigue. Yes, but also something earnest in his expression. "You know," she said quietly, "this is the second time a wealthy man promised to help me. The first time ended with him running off with funds and leaving me humiliated. You can't blame me for doubting." "I don't," Vincent replied. "I can't change what happened to you before, but I can prove I'm different now." He hesitated, then added, "That's why I won't pressure you for any personal acceptance or forgiveness. Take your time. Just know I want to be here if you'll let me." She bit her lower lip, uncertain. "We'll see. For now, I guess we work on stabilizing the garden. That's enough to handle." He offered a tentative smile. "Agreed. And thank you for not shutting me out completely." Chloe lowered her gaze, hugging herself protectively. "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't conflicted. Part of me wants to rage at you for violating my privacy. Another part wants to give you a chance because you've done more for my garden in one day than I could in months of scrambling." Vincent gently settled onto the bench. "Both feelings are valid." For a while, neither spoke. The hush of the hospital's night shift enveloped them. Finally, Chloe turned to leave, heart still heavy but faintly hopeful. "We'll talk soon," she managed, stepping away. As she walked back upstairs, she mulled over the new normal, a precarious alliance, a swirl of anger and gratitude, and a slow, cautious stirring in her chest that told her maybe, just maybe, she was no longer alone in her fight. Despite the lingering tension with Vincent, Chloe woke the next morning feeling lighter than she had in weeks. The glaring threat of losing the Bloom Project had vanished overnight, replaced by a cautious sense of stability. Henderson, upon hearing the confirmation that Moore Industries was officially purchasing the land, sent a curt text accepting the deal. No more frantic calls, no more looming eviction. The garden was safe. She arrived at the hospital with a subdued smile. Sarah, catching the shift in Chloe's demeanor, gave her a knowing grin. "So, the garden's future is set?" Chloe nodded. "Seems so. Henderson got his money, and we keep our space." "There's some paperwork, but it's basically done." She paused, a faint blush creeping to her cheeks. Vincent really came through. Sarah didn't miss the hesitation in her voice. "But you're still upset about his methods." "Yeah," Chloe admitted. "It's complicated. I respect him for following through, but I'm not sure how I feel about, well, him." They parted ways when Chloe got paged to a patient's room. The day flew by with typical hospital chaos, CV changes, chart updates, comforting anxious families. Through it all, she found her mood slightly brighter, an underlying sense of relief buoying her steps. In the early afternoon, a message from Evelyn popped up. "We're drafting official documents for the garden. Would love your input. Can you join us at 5 p.m. in the hospital cafe?" Chloe replied with a simple, "Sure." By 5 o'clock, she made her way to the small cafe on the second floor. She found Vincent seated at a quiet table by the window, Evelyn on his right, a neat stack of papers between them. Outside, the Manhattan skyline glowed under the late afternoon sun. Vincent stood politely when Chloe approached. "Thanks for coming," he said, motioning for her to sit. Evelyn slid a document across the table. "It's a preliminary agreement. We purchased the land from Henderson, but management and all operational decisions remain with you and your volunteer team. Moore Industries will fund expansions if you'd like. New raised beds, a tool shed, maybe a small greenhouse." Chloe's eyes widened. A greenhouse. She'd dreamed of that for years. A way to keep the garden alive year-round and offer new programs for the teenagers. "That's incredible." Vincent offered a hesitant smile. "We want to see it flourish, whatever that looks like to you." As Chloe skimmed the pages, she noted clauses ensuring her autonomy, outlining that Moore Industries wouldn't brand the garden with giant corporate logos or control its day-to-day activities. It felt almost too good to be true, stirring both excitement and a cautious pang of distrust. When she glanced up, Vincent's gaze was steady, as if waiting for her reaction. "It's generous," she finally said, "and thorough. I appreciate it." Evelyn's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned slightly, then rose. "Sorry, urgent call. I'll let you two finalize details." She excused herself, leaving Chloe and Vincent alone. A moment of silence fell. Chloe tapped the pen restlessly. "I want to be honest. This is everything I hoped for the garden, but I'm still not over how you deceived me. I need you to know that signing papers doesn't automatically fix what happened." Vincent nodded, voice quiet. "I understand. I only want to show I mean what I say. Whether you believe me now or eventually, I'll keep my promise." She drummed her fingers on the table, eyes flicking to the window where the light softened over the city. "I guess one step at a time." He offered a half smile. "Exactly. And if you ever feel like I'm overstepping, tell me. I want this to be on your terms." She studied his expression, searching for any hint of the cunning or manipulation she feared. Instead, she saw earnest concern and a touch of vulnerability. "All right," she murmured, "then let's do it." With a swift, decisive motion, she signed her name on the dotted line. Vincent added his signature, finalizing the agreement. A strange sense of peace crept into her chest, mingled with an odd fluttering that reminded her she wasn't only making a professional bond here, but perhaps planting seeds for something more personal. She couldn't say yet if those seeds would take root or wither under the weight of her doubts, but at least for now, the garden was blooming again, and so, maybe, was a tiny spark of hope she'd long buried. Within days of signing the agreement, the transformation around the Bloom project began in earnest. While the official transfer of funds and paperwork took place behind the scenes, deliveries of new supplies started arriving at the garden's fenced lot in Queens: wooden planks, fresh soil, mulch, and even a stack of greenhouse panels. Chloe oversaw each delivery with hands-on determination. A warm afternoon sun bathed the neighborhood as she and a handful of volunteers unloaded materials from a truck. Teens who frequented the garden bustled about, eager to help paint signs and stack wooden planks for the new raised beds. Everyone's energy felt electric, hopeful, alive. Chloe paused to wipe sweat from her brow, taking in the swirl of activity. It still felt surreal. Only a short while ago, she'd imagined bulldozers rolling over this space. Now, with the backing of more industries, they were expanding instead of shrinking. She noticed Sarah laughing with a group of teens as they tested out paint colors on a scrapboard. A sleek black sedan pulled up to the curb, drawing curious glances. Chloe's pulse quickened when she saw Vincent Moore step out, wearing casual clothes for once, dark jeans and a simple button-down shirt. He surveyed the vibrant scene, seeming both slightly self-conscious and genuinely pleased. "Hey," he greeted, approaching Chloe with a small smile. "I thought I'd see how things are going. Evelyn told me supplies arrived today." Chloe tucked a stray hair behind her ear. "They did. We're making progress. Come on, I'll show you the new layout." She led him along a row of freshly turned soil. Already, a few volunteers were planting seedlings, planning for the next season's crops. "We used to only have enough space for simple raised beds. Now with the greenhouse, we can teach about hydroponics, maybe start a small vocational program." Vincent nodded, watching a few of the teenagers grin in his direction. "It's impressive. They look so happy." "They are," Chloe said softly, remembering how kids like Andre used to roam the streets with nothing to do. Now they had tasks, responsibilities, and a positive outlet. She cast Vincent a tentative glance. "Thanks for making it happen, even if, you know, it's still complicated between us." He met her eyes with sincerity. "I understand. I'm just grateful you let me be part of it. I'd like to help with the manual work if you don't mind." He gestured toward the stacked planks. Chloe raised her eyebrows, but a small smile tugged at her lips. "Sure. I hope you're ready to get your hands dirty." A short while later, Vincent knelt beside her to secure the corners of a new raised bed. He fumbled a bit with the power drill, and Chloe stifled a laugh, showing him how to hold it steady. The two of them worked in companionable silence under the watchful eyes of volunteers who whispered excitedly, half in awe, that the wealthy CEO was hammering nails into raw wood. When they finished, Vincent straightened, brushing sawdust off his jeans. "You weren't kidding about hard labor," he joked, flexing his fingers. Chloe couldn't help but notice the genuine smile on his face, unlike the stoic, corporate expression she'd seen in the hospital. Nearby, Sarah called out, "Hey, we're short on gloves for tomorrow's painting. Could you add that to your list, Chloe?" "Will do," Chloe replied, then checked the time on her phone. "We should probably wrap soon." She turned to Vincent. "Thanks for stopping by. And, for everything else." He nodded, the air between them momentarily charged with unspoken questions. One of the teens, a girl named Letitia, shyly offered Vincent a small pot of seedlings. "For you," she said, "to plant at home. It's like a thank you." Vincent accepted the gift, visibly touched. Chloe watched the scene, her heart softening. Maybe they couldn't erase the rocky start, but they were forging something new, an alliance that felt more honest by the day. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the garden, Chloe saw the first tangible fruits of her labor and Vincent's support. It was, in every sense, a first harvest, not just for the seeds in the ground, but for the tentative trust growing between them. The following week brought a new energy to the hospital and to the Bloom Project in Queens. Chloe balanced her nursing shifts with overseeing the garden's improvements, juggling piles of paperwork and phone calls regarding the now official acquisition by more industries. Although her conversations with Vincent remained somewhat guarded, she found it easier to be around him. He kept his promises. No corporate logos plastered around, no heavy-handed demands, just quiet support. Late one afternoon, as a gentle breeze cooled the hospital courtyard, Chloe noticed Vincent waiting by a cluster of flowering shrubs. He seemed different outside the tense confines of the VIP suite, less guarded, more present. His gaze caught hers, and she walked over with a small, polite nod. "I was hoping to see you," Vincent said, offering a tentative smile. "I just finished talking with Evelyn about scheduling a dedication event at the garden, something to officially mark its expansion." Chloe brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "A dedication event? Sounds formal. We usually just have neighborhood barbecues and paint days." She hesitated. "But maybe this is something the community would appreciate. It'd show them we're serious about growing together." Vincent nodded, his posture relaxing. "That's the goal. We could invite the local press too, but only if you're comfortable. Maybe seeing a positive story come out of more industries will help overshadow the drama Alex caused." Her stomach tensed slightly at the mention of the press, but she also recognized how beneficial publicity could be, especially if it inspired more volunteers or funding for youth programs. "We can discuss it," she said. "I want the focus on the kids, not on you or me." A faint grin touched his lips. "Understood." He shifted his weight, glancing at the blooms around them. "While I have you here, how are you holding up? Things have changed so fast. I know it can't be easy." She studied his expression. Genuine concern glimmered in his eyes, nothing like the calculating gaze she used to imagine. "It's been a whirlwind," she admitted, "but the garden's thriving again. The kids are excited." "I'm grateful for that." A short silence followed, broken only by the distant sound of footsteps. Then Chloe inhaled, deciding to share a bit more. "I still have days when I feel conflicted about everything that happened in that hospital room, but I'm slowly realizing you were in a tough spot too. Part of me can't believe I'm saying this, but I see you trying." Vincent let out a breath he seemed to be holding. "I am trying," he confirmed softly. "And if there's anything else I can do, just tell me." Before Chloe could respond, a clatter of metal echoed across the courtyard as a staff member wheeled a cart of supplies around the corner. The moment was interrupted, but some tender understanding now hovered between them. Chloe gave a slight, grateful nod, then excused herself for her next shift, a flicker of warmth in her chest replacing old anger. That evening, as she left the hospital, her phone buzzed. It was Sarah, excitedly reporting that a group of local high school students had decided to volunteer at the garden over weekends. They'd heard about the Bloom Project from their guidance counselors, who cited it as a model program for youth empowerment. Laughing at Sarah's enthusiasm, Chloe walked to the subway with renewed optimism. Perhaps Vincent wasn't the only one growing into new territory. She, too, was learning to open up more, cautiously letting go of past wounds. Despite the lingering shadows of old pain, their joint effort to protect and improve the garden forced them into a sort of partnership. Each day, the arrangement felt less like a business transaction and more like a shared mission. And though Chloe's heart was far from fully healed, it started beating with a stronger rhythm, one that believed, at least a little, in the possibility of trusting someone again. Far above, The summer sky stretched into soft twilight as she descended the subway steps. And within her, a fragile but persistent sense of hope took root, as though she and Vincent were carefully tending not just a garden, but the seeds of something deeper, each finding rebirth in the fertile soil of second chances. Morning sun glinted off the skyscrapers as Chloe arrived at the Presbyterian Hospital for another day's shift. The press coverage of Vincent Moore's public statements had started to settle, replaced by talk of the upcoming dedication event at the Bloom Project. Chloe overheard colleagues murmuring about it in the staff lounge. Some were excited, others teased her gently about being business partners with the once mysterious CEO. Still, she tried not to let the gossip rattle her. Her focus was on patients first. By midday, she was busily tending to a post-operative case when Dr. Ramirez approached, clipboard in hand. He gave her a supportive smile. Heard the garden is coming along fantastically, and rumor has it Vincent Moore has become quite the champion for community projects. Chloe's cheeks warmed. That's what they're saying. We're finalizing an event next week to show the neighborhood our upgrades. Dr. Ramirez nodded approvingly, then lowered his voice. You two seem closer these days. She cleared her throat awkwardly. We're talking more, that's for sure, but I'm still keeping boundaries. That deception from before, it'll take time. Ramirez's eyes softened. True trust is earned, not given. You'll know if and when you can fully trust him. He glanced at his watch. Anyway, just wanted to say I'm happy for you and for the kids who rely on that garden. Chloe thanked him and returned to her patients. Yet his words echoed in her mind for the rest of the day. She recalled Vincent's earnest expression, the gentle way he asked if she was okay. Step by step, he was inching into her life, not just as a benefactor, but as a person she might be able to respect. And, if she was honest, someone who stirred feelings she wasn't ready to label. Later, she snagged a quick lunch in the hospital's cafeteria. Sarah plopped down beside her. I caught wind that Moore Industries is reorganizing some of its charitable outreach programs. Evelyn's at the helm, and apparently your project is the pilot for a new model of community partnership. Chloe sipped her water, a knot of pride and apprehension forming in her stomach. It's an honor, she admitted, but I don't want it to become some PR stunt. Sarah shrugged. From what I see, Vincent's not bragging about it. He's making real changes. Besides, you deserve the support. You've poured your heart into that garden. Chloe set down her cup. Yes, but now people at work treat me differently, like I'm either lucky or cunning for being affiliated with a millionaire CEO. I hate that kind of talk. Sarah leaned closer, voice gentle. You can't control people's gossip. You just do what you do best. Care for patients, nurture your garden, and let them see your honest intentions. The rest will fade. Taking a deep breath, Chloe forced a smile. Thanks. You're right. It's just new territory. After lunch, the hours blurred by in a rush of patient charts and medication rounds. By the time she could break free, the sun was dipping toward late afternoon. She stepped into an elevator, intending to grab her bag from the staff room, when Vincent slipped inside right before the doors closed. He wore a crisp shirt, jacket slung over one arm. Hey, he greeted quietly. I was just on my way out. Didn't mean to ambush you. She forced a light tone. No ambush, just good timing. The elevator hummed upward, the enclosed space suddenly thick with unspoken tension. Long day, she asked, filling the silence. Meetings with the legal team, plus board members who are furious about Alex's downfall, Vincent admitted. But it's necessary and I'm getting through it. He studied her face. How about you? You look tired. She managed a faint laugh. Welcome to nursing. I'm fine, though. The elevator chimed, doors sliding open. They both stepped into the corridor, footsteps echoing. Vincent hesitated as if searching for words, then ventured softly, "There's a charity gala next month that I'm supposed to attend. Something Moore Industries sponsors. I was wondering if you'd like to join me as my guest." Chloe's eyes widened. It felt like a pivotal question. Was this a friendly invite, a corporate courtesy, or something more personal? Her pulse quickened, mind flashing back to all the baggage they still carried. She swallowed. Let me think about it. I'm not really a gala type." He smiled gently. "I understand. No pressure. Just, if you decide yes, I'd be honored to have you there." With that, he nodded goodbye and made his way down the hallway. Watching his retreating form, Chloe felt a swirl of indecision. She was stepping into daylight, so to speak. No more secrets or hidden corners. The question was, could she walk beside Vincent Moore in that open light, unafraid of judgments and her own guarded heart? The day of the garden's dedication event arrived with blue skies and a pleasant breeze, as though nature itself applauded their efforts. Dozens of volunteers, neighbors, hospital colleagues, and Moore Industries staff gathered among the rows of newly built raised beds. Colorful banners waved in the wind, proclaiming "Growing Together" in bright letters that the teens had painted. Chloe stood near a table laden with refreshments, heart pounding in a mix of excitement and nerves. She was used to small neighborhood gatherings, but this had a different feel. Local press cameras panned across the vibrant scene, capturing the mural-like panels where kids had painted flowers, butterflies, and affirming messages of hope. Vincent arrived quietly, stepping out of a simple black car with Evelyn by his side. He wore a relaxed blazer, an open-collared shirt, and an expression that seemed at once proud and humble. A handful of reporters trailed him, microphones ready. Chloe's pulse fluttered, her past unease with media coverage surfacing, but remembering the kids, she squared her shoulders and waved him over. "Hey," she greeted softly when he reached her. "It's quite a turnout." He surveyed the bustling crowd. "Yeah, it's inspiring to see so many people care about this place." Then, lowering his voice, he added, "How are you?" "Nervous." "Maybe a little," she confessed. "I'm not used to speaking in front of cameras. But I want the public to understand why this garden matters." Evelyn slipped to their side, handing Chloe a small index card of talking points. "No pressure to read it word for word," she said gently. "Just some notes if you want them." Chloe looked it over. It mentioned the garden's history, its mission for at-risk youth, and the partnership with Moore Industries. She swallowed hard. "Thanks. Let's do this." Soon, a makeshift stage area formed near a cluster of sunflowers. Dr. Ramirez stood by, grinning broadly, and Sarah ushered the kids forward, clapping to gather everyone's attention. Chloe stepped up to the microphone. The familiar faces of the neighborhood bolstered her confidence. She began simply, from the heart. "When we started the Bloom Project, we had nothing but a patch of soil, a few seeds, and a dream of offering a safe space for young people to grow, literally and emotionally. Over time, we added art programs and mentorship, but we were always scraping by. Many times, I thought we'd lose it all." Her voice caught slightly. She saw Vincent watching from the side, his expression encouraging. "But we hung on," she continued. "Now, with the support of Moore Industries and countless volunteers, we're expanding. It means more kids can learn, more families can benefit, and our community can unite around something positive. So thank you for believing in us, for showing up, and for reminding me that if we plant hope, it can flourish in the most unexpected ways." Applause broke out. Heat rushed to her cheeks, but it was a gratifying warmth. Cameras flashed, reporters took notes. Then Vincent stepped forward, offering a few remarks about community engagement and more industry's commitment to philanthropy. He kept it short, focusing on the people behind the project rather than touting his own role. Chloe felt a tightness in her chest, ease. Maybe he really did care about more than mere optics. After the speeches, the crowd split into smaller pockets of conversation, sampling snacks, touring the new greenhouse frames. Chloe found herself drawn into enthusiastic chats with local parents. Every so often, her gaze snagged on Vincent, who spoke with one of the teenagers about planting techniques. He crouched down, demonstrating how to gently handle seedlings, an image so far removed from the distant CEO persona. As the day wound down, a teenage girl asked if she could take a photo with both Chloe and Vincent. They obliged, standing against a colorful mural. The girl beamed, declaring she wanted to show her classmates that dreams could come true. Chloe felt an unexpected sting of tears, remembering the darkest days when she feared she'd have to close the garden's gates forever. But now, she stood in a thriving space, shoulder to shoulder, with a man whose initial lie had left her shattered, yet whose actions had helped her rebuild. She didn't know what the future held between them, but as she smiled for the camera, she sensed they were harvesting more than vegetables and flowers. They were reaping the fruits of trust, of second chances, and of letting hope take root where doubt once reigned. A few days after the dedication event, Chloe took a rare afternoon off to finalize updates on the garden's schedule. New volunteer programs needed coordination. High school clubs wanted to book visits. A local mental health group hoped to offer therapy sessions among the plants. And a small group of seniors asked about a weekly gardening circle. It was exactly the kind of growth Chloe had once only fantasized about. Seated at a wooden picnic table on site, she sorted through email printouts, occasionally smiling at how the Bloom Project had become a community touchstone. A gust of warm breeze ruffled the edges of her pages. She looked up to see Vincent approaching, carefully holding 2 paper cups of iced tea. "Thought you could use a break," he said, handing her a cup. "Heard you've been juggling about 50 different schedules." Chloe chuckled. "More like 60, but yeah, it's a good problem to have." She took a sip, relishing the sweet, cold drink. "Thank you." He settled across from her, casting an admiring glance around the garden. "So, who'd have guessed we'd be here a month ago? This place looks even more alive with the new fences, the greenhouse frame, all these volunteers." She followed his gaze, her heart swelling. "It's surreal sometimes. I used to worry we wouldn't make it to the next season. Now we're planning expansions." A soft hush fell between them. Not uncomfortable, but thoughtful. Then Vincent cleared his throat. "I've been reflecting a lot on the future of Moore Industries, how we can replicate this kind of community engagement elsewhere. Evelyn and I are drafting a proposal to fund small-scale local initiatives in other boroughs too." Chloe's eyes lit up. "That's amazing. If you truly support more projects like this, you could create real impact." Vincent nodded earnestly. "Exactly. And you've shown me how a personal touch, caring about actual lives, can transform the typical corporate approach. It's no longer just a bottom-line calculation." She felt a warmth of pride, tempered by the memory of how they'd first collided under false pretenses. "I'm glad to hear that. I just hope any new project doesn't start with you faking a coma," she teased gently. The old pain now softened enough to joke about. At least a little. He winced with a rueful smile. "Don't worry, I've retired that strategy forever." Chloe laughed quietly, then changed the subject. "So, what about Alex? I heard the board's final decisions about his position are coming soon." Vincent's expression tightened. "He's fighting to maintain some stake, but with all the evidence Evelyn and I gathered, he won't be returning in any leadership capacity. It'll be a legal matter if he pushes further." He sighed. "I regret it had to reach that point, but he dug his own hole. My focus is on rebuilding trust in the company." Chloe placed a hand on one of the email printouts. I guess we both know a thing or two about rebuilding trust. Her gaze met his, and for a moment, she let the vulnerability show. I'm learning to let go of some bitterness, Vincent. You proved your intentions here, time and again. He swallowed, relief flickering in his eyes. I'm glad. I never wanted to hurt you, and I hope someday I can be more than just your corporate partner for the garden. The sun filtered through the overhead branches, casting dappled light on the table. Chloe's chest fluttered with equal parts caution and a tentative stirring of affection. Well, let's keep doing what we're doing. We'll see where it goes, she offered, her tone gentle but open. He nodded, sipping his iced tea. Neither rushed to fill the silence that followed. The noise of volunteers in the distance and the rustle of leaves overhead provided a serene soundtrack. In that calm, Chloe felt that they were sowing the seeds of a larger legacy, not just for the garden or more industries, but for their own personal growth. Whether this new chapter led to friendship or something deeper, they were bound by a shared vision of healing and possibility. A few weeks later, on a Saturday morning, sunlight drenched the Bloom project in a warm, golden glow. The official re-inauguration had become a lively event, complete with music, laughter, and the sweet scent of freshly planted flowers. Children ran along the newly painted mural wall, squealing with delight as they pointed out their own handprints. Parents, volunteers, and local supporters meandered among the rows of greens and herbs, marveling at how vibrant everything looked. Chloe stood near the greenhouse entrance, beaming at the transformation. Thanks to Vincent's steady backing, the structure was complete, glass panels shining in the sun, seedlings thriving inside on neat wooden tables. Nearby, Dr. Ramirez and Sarah chatted with some of the teens, sharing stories of how the garden originally took root. The joy in everyone's faces reminded Chloe of why she'd fought so hard to keep this place alive. Suddenly, she felt a presence beside her. Vincent stepped up, casual in khakis and a light polo, a far cry from his power suits. He watched the scene, hands in his pockets, a calm smile curving his lips. "You've done something incredible," he murmured. "Look at these people, Chloe. They're experiencing genuine hope and unity." Her chest tightened with gratitude. "We did it," she corrected softly. "I might never have gotten this far without you." Vincent turned to meet her gaze. In the bright daylight, his eyes reflected not just satisfaction, but a quiet admiration for her. "I only gave you the resources. You're the one who nurtured it into what it is." Before she could respond, a small group of teenagers approached, hugging Chloe and thanking Vincent. One of them, Andre, who once confided he had no safe space to call his own, gestured around the garden. "Miss Chloe, Mr. Moore, you guys rock. I can't wait to show my younger cousins they can learn to grow stuff here too." Chloe smiled, her heart full. The teens hurried off to join a painting activity near the mural. Turning back to Vincent, she found him watching her, eyes brimming with a warmth she'd rarely seen. Her breath caught. He cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about the future, both mine and more industries. Maybe this is a template for more places, but it also feels personal, like a second chance at, well, a lot of things." Chloe's pulse fluttered. She knew exactly what he meant. Second chances not only for battered trust, but for opening oneself to the risk of caring deeply. "Me too," she admitted, voice quiet. "I still have scars, though." "I can't pretend I'm ready to jump headfirst into something," Vincent nodded understandingly. "Scars take time to fade. I respect that. Let's keep building this connection at a pace that makes sense for both of us." Her eyes softened. "Yeah, that sounds right." They lapsed into a comfortable silence, watching a group of seniors carefully potting flowers in clay containers. The sun glinted off the greenhouse glass, and a light breeze carried the scent of rosemary and basil. In many ways, Chloe realized the garden was a metaphor for what had transpired between her and Vincent. The seeds of suspicion and doubt had been planted, yet nurtured by honesty and effort, a new crop of trust was taking root. Dr. Ramirez called out, "Hey, we need our fearless leader for a photo." Several volunteers beckoned Chloe and Vincent to join them by the flower beds. She laughed, linking arms with Sarah as they gathered for the shot. Vincent stood on Chloe's other side, placing a light hand on her shoulder, gentle, not claiming, but supportive. A photographer snapped the picture, capturing smiles and a few silly poses. For a moment, Chloe closed her eyes, feeling the sunshine on her face, the warmth of Vincent's hand, and the happiness emanating from every corner of the garden. A wave of emotion swept over her, recalling the nights she'd cried in that hospital room, believing all hope was lost. How different things looked now. When the group broke apart, Chloe turned to Vincent and impulsively brushed a speck of soil off his sleeve. Their eyes met. She sensed a question in his gaze, an unspoken query about where they stood, how far they'd come. No words were needed. She just gave him a tender smile that promised they would find out together. Perhaps their story wouldn't be perfect, but it would be real, like every thriving plant in this garden that bore signs of weathering, yet stood strong under the sun. As the day ended, families filtered out, volunteers cleaned up, and the laughter gradually softened. Chloe and Vincent lingered in the quietness, walking among the rows where seedlings hinted at a fresh season ahead. The world glowed in the late afternoon light, as if celebrating the renewal happening in these plots of earth and within their own lives. Hand in hand, they paused at a newly planted sapling and gently pressed soil around its base. Together, they nurtured this symbol of all they had sown, a living testament that second chances could indeed blossom into something extraordinary, under the sun of a new day. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.